lounging, son.
All right, welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and back with me again is another one of my favorite indie cartoonists. I got Jamie Jones with me, and we're going to talk comics. We're going to talk some of the new stuff he's doing, and yeah, the Kickstarter that's coming up too as well. So welcome, dude. Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm so glad to be here. I'm so happy to have you in the community and talking to indie creators and doing all that,
Thanks,
all that good jazz.
Yeah, dude, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, I've talked to quite a bit of people in the past. Whenever I decided to start, getting more indie cartoonists on the channel, large amount of them, a lot of people scheduled. I got a lot of people banked that haven't even hit, at least as of the time this is recording. So yeah, dude, I'm glad to have you back. Talk some comics with you, man.
Yeah, man.
So what have you been up to? Let's catch up a little bit. Since last time we talked, the Kickstarter was still running for the Pink Lemonade Baboon crossover comic. So what's been going on with you since then?
So up until very early last year, I was working on Quarter Killer for Comixology. One of the Comixology originals lines. It was with Vita Ayala and Danny Lore. That ended. That wrapped up. That was a 5-issue run, which you can get, I guess for free if you're a Comixology Unlimited person or you have an Amazon Prime account. They just give it to you, which is kind of cool. And then, like, I've had a crazy beginning of my year. I moved to a different state. I am now living in Savannah, Georgia, which is a great comics town. They have a really cool shop over here, and I'm working on more Baboon stuff. I kind of went full in on the Baboon and the second Baboon book. It's 94 pages. It's completely penciled, completely inked. I'm lettering it slowly and then doling out those pages on Patreon every Tuesday. So that's kind of been my thing. That's what I've been working on.
All right, cool, man. And is Patreon something that you've recently added, or did you have it the last time we talked? Because I don't think we ever really got into it.
I may have had it when we talked last. I'm sure I've had it when we talked last. I've had it for such a long time. This is now the first time that I've kind of understood Patreon and kind of been using it differently. Patreon is really weird for comics. I think Ed Piskor really kind of changed the game just by having so much content all the time. There's a couple guys who do Patreon really, really well. Chuck Forsman has a really cool Patreon. Rich Tommaso does his whole Black Phoenix magazine through Patreon. And Michelle Fife has a Patreon. But I think they all like stop it at certain points. They stop it and they bring it back up. They retool it and they come back greater. So I kind of stopped my Patreon for a while, and then with the second Baboon book, as opposed to I was planning on doing a Kickstarter in March for it, but I moved, life happened, things changed, and I was like, oh, I can't, I'm sitting on 94 pages of completed work. What am I, like, am I just gonna not put it out for a whole year? And then I just decided to put it up on Patreon because it seemed like what all the cool kids were doing. So, but it's great. It's been really fun, and the community over there is really cool.
Yeah, I think Patreon is definitely a really cool way to connect with creators. I'm still discovering every so often. I'll be like, oh shit, they have a Patreon, like Chester Brown.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and I was like,
crazy.
I was like, what the fuck? Like that, I don't even know. I can't even tell you how I found it. Really cool finding out, like that he has one, and he sent me a mini comic that he does. He serializes some stuff on there as well. Obviously Ed Piskor, we got Jim Rugg. I love Jim Rugg's Patreon. His is like one of my favorite because he really gets into process, right?
Right. Yeah. It's a cool platform, and I'm glad that people are finally kind of figuring out how to use Patreon for comics. It just wasn't a thing. Patreon is kind of built around video and musicians, music. That was kind of why it was built. It was built by a musician. It was built by a guy who made YouTube videos, right? So like it really serves well for that type of content and that type of creator. Comic books, it's kind of new. It's still trying to figure out how it works. It's gone through a lot of updates since I've been on Patreon that helps like findability and even just like being able to post multiple stuff or multiple images in one post. That's huge. I don't think that was a thing when I was uploading full PDFs to Patreon like when I started, and now I'm uploading just like, here's 5 pages at high resolution PNGs. Like you can just see it at 600 DPI, right? It's not it's really cool. It's really cool to be able to do that now.
Yeah, and like, I mean, I've often thought of doing one too for the channel. I just, like for me, like for you, it's easier. I feel like it would almost be easier for like a comic book artist, right? Like, oh, we're getting this content. This is what you're getting for subscribing, right? Like at Piscord, $3 a month, get the 2 pages of every Tuesday, right? But it's an interesting platform. Like that's why I'm kind of like trying to pick your brain a little bit on it, because I've tried to think of like a way that I could do it to kind of like at least pay for the channel, because the channel pays everybody on a yearly basis, for the podcast and for the website and all that stuff. So it's an interesting thing. It's an interesting way to generate support from the people that dig what you do.
Yeah, and that's really what I think you have to go in looking at Patreon that way. I know you might even have it easier, right? You can upload videos a week before they go live on YouTube for your patrons, and that's like just a little added bonus that they get for supporting the channel to keep the channel running. It works. It can work for you. I think, hit me up. I'll help you set something up so it will look good. But I think it would be really good for, it's made for YouTube. It's made for people doing what you're doing, more so than like me or Jim Rugg or Fisker, right? Like it's not made for comics. It's not Instagram of like crowdfunding. It's just not.
All right. I mean, it's funny. I think I'm only a patron for comic book artists,
which is great, and I'm glad that niche is breaking up and starting to, or blowing up and starting to become easier.
Actually, I do have 2 underground hip hop artists on there, I think too. Actually, yeah, I have 2. Because I mean, I'm a huge fan of theirs, and yeah, like you said, like it is cool because like they'll drop tracks, like that you can't get anywhere else. So
right.
I love that stuff. I love being able to get music that I can't get anywhere else, But so how, like, back to you though, how has the Patreon worked for you? How has it kind of, you said like you reworked the way you were approaching it. As an artist, how beneficial is that to have kind of in your tool bag of ways to generate support?
Yeah, I mean, it's not even support. It's like, how many ways can you diversify to make an income, right? To bring in money,
right?
Which is crazy. I try not to look at it that way a lot. I try not to talk about it that way. I try not to think about it that way, because then it starts to feel a little dirty. But when, but it's the fact of the matter is, being able to do multiple things, being able to rehash or resell things that you've already done, makes your life livable. it's being able to put out the book, being able to put out the Baboon. So the Baboon, the Temple of Eternal Life, is what I'm currently posting up there. And I post like 5 pages a week. What that allows me to do is, 1, make my spelling errors over there. I'm putting it out in black and white. It's already done. And it allows me, it kind of gives me a buffer time to color the book before I go to Kickstarter, and then really ask for the funds to print the book. Lets me kind of create without the pressure of a publisher, without the pressure of anything. So it it's the only place. Patreon is the only place that I can go and be like, hey, I'm doing this now. Hope you follow me. Hope you continue to do to bring your support. Or like you go to other social media platforms where you're marketing constantly, and it's kind of disheartening sometimes when you're like working on your own project, you're trying to make your thing, you're trying to do your stuff, and then it gets buried in the algorithm. But then the second you draw a picture of Spider-Man, it spikes through the roof, and you're like, all right,
Yeah.
cool. I guess I should just draw Spider-Man all the time. Like it's finding fans and finding a fan base that are kind of your ride or dies. I have people on Patreon who I met at conventions, who I just met on social media, and they came to Patreon, and they are constantly talking to me. They're constantly supporting. They're constantly adding value to the community around somebody's work. That's what Patreon kind of works for. And that's kind of how I've been approaching this when I redid the book, when I've started putting the second book out, I really kind of reworked and retooled the Patreon kind of around that book, and more around me as a creator instead of the content. So like I put up stuff about process. I wrote a free article about my big pencil. I have a big pencil. It's it's huge. It's a 5.6 millimeter pencil. I wrote an article about it, just talking about why I like it. I put that up on Patreon, right? Like that's the place for that to go, where people can go and find it. It's more like unfiltered Jamie Jones than it is like, here's the final product. This is what you're getting, which is nice. I like it. I like it for that purpose.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think it's an interesting platform. I think like I said, I signed up for one, and then I just never did anything with it, because I'm like, you know what, I have to figure, I need to be able to give the supporters something that I feel is like valuable in some way, if I'm going to be like, hey, give me this much every month and
Yeah.
what you get, so I think it's cool. And like you said, it's kind of like, it's unfiltered Jamie Jones, that people are going there because they want to see what you're doing, or to get your opinions on stuff, right? Like they're paying for that. So I think that that's cool in that respect. And I think that it is, especially for the indie creator, right? Whether it's a YouTuber, a musician, an artist, to get support from fans and be able to connect with them. Because it is cool that you can message people. Like that's how I've connected with a couple people.
Yeah.
You can message them once you're a supporter. Yeah, I think even if you're not a supporter, I'm not really sure. I've only messaged people I'm supporting. So, but I think it's such a cool thing to do and to see. And I love process stuff. Like I was that guy that would buy DVDs because I wanted the special feature,
right,
just for the movie. So to me, this is like getting the special features of a comic book.
That's entirely what it's like. We live in a really cool age right now where kind of anybody who's creating something is a small business, and it's mind-boggling to be like, oh yeah, you run a small business, I have a small business. Anybody who has a YouTube channel that continuously posts and treats it like a job becomes a small business, right? Like Patreon kind of allows you to see some of the inner workings of the small business and see like how people are making stuff, and really find your audience. Smaller groups of people finding and supporting one person, as opposed to a bunch of people going to a conglomerate or a big company to continuously support, right? DC has to rely on an insane amount of people to make their products happen. I do not. I can rely on like 100 people. If the goal is to get 1,000 people, right? That's once you have 1,000 people, you can kind of just do whatever you want, and it's that tribe mentality.
Right.
You find your tribe, and it's great. I can make stuff that I'm interested in making, and finding the audience that's very specific, that they're interested in what I'm making, and go from there, as opposed to let me appeal to the widest mass I can, which was my mentality for a really long time. And I'm slowly shifting. It's like the rotation of the sun slow, or rotation of the earth slow. Like I used to think that I just wanted to be a creator who is, people like my stuff. I'm doing like the first Baboon book is kind of still in that mentality where I'm trying to do something that's for everyone. As I've developed and kind of pushed through to the next book, and as I'm thinking about future projects with it, it's becoming more and more of a project that is more personal to me, and then saying screw it to the to the guys who don't like it, right? Like locking in the audience. And this is a big reason why Patreon is so big for me, is I know there are people who are liking the stuff that I'm pushing forward to do, doing more personal things, doing more, just kind of letting my ideas flow out of me onto the page, as opposed to how much, what's the widest reach I can make, or how can I not offend the widest amount of people? You know what I mean? That's one of my big like praises for Patreon, is the ability and the way to get people together, kind of getting your group to be able to do your thing.
Oh yeah, dude. No, I totally agree. And I know this whole conversation has been pretty much exclusively talking about Patreon, but I think it's an interesting thing that I don't hear people talking enough about. And you know, I think that
Yeah.
cool to get to bounce it off you and anybody listening and watching. Like, if they're on the fence about doing it, or if they are doing it, I guarantee this conversation has probably helped people think about what they could do for their own stuff. And I think that I love your stuff, and I remember getting that first Baboon from you pre end of the world pandemic, you know. So and I've loved your stuff ever since then, man. And I'm very yeah. Let's talk about the new. So let's talk about the new Baboon. What we can expect. I know you're serializing some of it on Patreon in black and white, but let's hear about the story, stuff like that, and what your plans are with the book.
Yeah, it's so it's a 94-page book, as opposed to the first book was 64 pages. I bumped up the page count. I'll probably not do that again. um, it takes a lot longer. 30 pages, who'd have thought? Takes a lot longer to do. We're continuing the story, right? I don't want to be. I want one and done stories. That's kind of my idea. Similar, like James Bond, you can just watch a James Bond movie, read a James Bond book, and it's James Bond. The character's the same, some ideas are happening, maybe some stuff is carrying over, but for the most part, it's just you can watch the movie without any predisposed story. Doc Savage, right? Old comics did this a lot, where the spirit from week to week, it's still the spirit, but they filled it for like 12 years, right? Like it's just an insane amount of work, a body of work that features a character through different adventures. So that's what the second book is. It's the Temple of Eternal Life is what it's called. It is, they're in the jungle in South America, deals with like Mayan culture a little bit. I try not to go too deep into it, and I don't want to be a historical cartoonist. I know some people would want to go, that would be their whole thing. There's ninjas, and there's a bad guy who is from the Baboon's past. I'm trying to also, with this book, open up more of the extended Baboon universe.
Okay.
And which is something that I was kind of hesitant to do, but I was talking to the editor of the book, and we were, and they mentioned, they're like, oh yeah, because it's like the whole Baboon universe. And I was like, oh, don't say that. That sounds cheesy and silly. And we continued to talk about the extended Baboon universe and what I could do to kind of build off of certain ideas. So every time I now make a character, every time a character appears in the book, I think, let me make this character as interesting as possible so I can do a spin-off of that character. That's how I know I have a cool character. So like in the second book, I have Ape Ellison, who's this originally was just like this Tarzan analog that I wanted for the book. And he's grown into almost more of like this spirit of the old world. He's like this preservation god, right? Like he just goes around and preserves kind of the old world. And that wasn't something I even thought about until I was literally typing his dialogue. It was I write where I write and draw at the same time, so I'll do my thumbnails and kind of write script stuff, and then when I get to the final page, I'm writing dialogue and tightening that up. I added so much dialogue for him just because, and it just kind of flowed out of me, and I was like, I don't know where this is going or who this character. Now all I want to do is write Abe Ellison stories, right? Like
Awesome.
and that brings me to, I guess, what may be a Kickstarter before this second book becomes a Kickstarter is the Baboon magazine. That's my big, I guess this is my big like announcement. I don't know if I've talked about it on other podcasts or anything, but I'm going to be doing a Baboon magazine, and it's going to be a black and white magazine that features characters that I've created in the Baboon comics, bringing them over into their own stories and their own adventures. Very similar to, I'm a big fan of The Spirit. We've talked about it. I talk about it constantly. But The Spirit had a cool magazine. The Spirit magazine came out through Warren and then Kitchen Sink Press. They have in that book interviews. So Shop Talk, Will Eisner's Shop Talk was in the pages of the Spirit magazine. I want to do something like that. I want to have articles that I write, just me musing about the industry, and then just fill it with comics and bring in guest artists to kind of take some of the stories and characters that I've been working on and put them into realization. So that's the new thing.
Hell yeah, dude!
So
That
it goes
sounds
from
dope.
the second book into the Baboon magazine, and I'm streaming, like making the Baboon magazine on Twitch right now. So everything on Twitch that I'm doing is all for the Baboon magazine. I've drawn 4 pages. I've inked. I wrote a story. I wrote an 8-page story for it. I've penciled and inked 4 pages already, or I penciled the whole thing. Like it's every day I just get on stream and I just start making comics, and people come out and hang out with me while I do it. So it was something that I was going to be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Right. And so now people can watch it.
Yeah, that's awesome, dude. So you're saying the magazine's gonna come out first. Do you have any thoughts on when you think you might want to start that Kickstarter?
I don't. It depends on coloring the second book. That's the only thing I'm really hung up on. When I get the biggest thing I need for the Baboon magazine is I've got some artists locked down, and I need to write their stories and see when they can do the work. They're kind of hanging me up a little bit. Like I would just, if it was just me, it would be done today. It would be done tomorrow. I would just, but it's going to be cool. The first run I think is going to be 5 issues. It's going to be, let's break down the Baboon magazine, because I've thought about this a lot. It's going to be black and white. I think I'm going to source paper from different companies and just bind it myself. Because I want kind of cheap, pulpy paper for the black and white sections. And then I want a color insert for the guest artists. They get the color stuff. And then an interview with the artist, a article by me, every issue. I've started to think about my career differently and trying to put myself more into it. We talked about this at the beginning. Put myself more into into the things that I'm creating. So I'm currently writing an article called Death to Nostalgia, which will be the first article in the magazine. And then a serialized story that runs from issue 1 to issue 5. And it will be a full 64-page kind of short story. So it's going to be a lot of content. It's going to be a lot of stuff in the book. I think it's going to be like a 38-page magazine, just jam-packed with comics and interviews and talking and musings and all of that stuff. So the first run's going to be 5 issues. That's locked in. Okay. I've got some guest artists that are going to do stuff. Oh, I also want, you'll dig this. I want a high gloss. This is the only time you'll ever hear me say, like, I want the glossiest paper. I want the glossiest paper for a guest. Like, I'm gonna go and hire like popular artists to do Baboon pinups and put them in. That's so high gloss centerfold poster in the middle.
Oh, dude, yes.
Yeah,
I'm very excited.
I know. It's such a cool thing. Yeah,
I think I'm kind of a paper nerd for sure. Like I love all that stuff with the aesthetics, like the different paper stocks, and like I love newsprint. You know what I mean? Like I still wish that there would be like a project that's completely in newsprint, but I get it. It's not something that, you know, that everybody is into.
Which I think is silly. Everyone should be into newsprint. Everyone should be in. It would. Here's some of, like, it would help. It would help if things were crappy and not these collectors' commodities and these items that we needed to hold on to. I think it would change the mentality around the industry to be a more storytelling driven industry, as opposed to it's the collector's market, right?
Yeah.
The direct market is a collector market. That's just kind of how it is. That's what
I know. I work in a shop, so I deal with it on a daily basis. You know?
Right. Yeah, even
it's all the time.
The best shops in the world still kind of tailor and go down to these I hate to say stoop down to their level, but it's like, it makes sense when you're making your living on $4 a sale. If you can sell some book for $200, why would you not?
Yeah, for sure.
But if books didn't cost $4 and we could sell multiple books, I think that would be a better industry. I think that would be a more fun industry. But the constant raising prices of DC books. The second my book,
dude, I know.
So indie books kind of traditionally have been $5 a pop. You pay $5, that's the book. I'll gladly pay. Copra comes out now, self-published again.
Yeah.
And I think it's a $6 book. Gladly, all day. Fife could put out a 10-page comic and I would buy it for $6. I go to the comic shop now and I like look through an issue of Batman and I'm like, this is $6? And I feel like I'm getting nothing out of it. But when I can see the artist do their thing and kind of feel them on the page, I'll pay $10 for his comic, right?
Right, yeah.
It doesn't but the Baboon Pink Lemonade Jamboree was a $5 book, and that book sells really well now, but it's also a cheaper book on the stands. So like you could put that book up next to Batman and be like, oh, here's Batman for $7. I keep raising the price of Batman apparently. Here's Batman for $7. Here's this weird indie book for $5. That $5 price tag doesn't sound crazy anymore because now I'm underselling the biggest heroes of all time, which is great. Which is great for me because I can now print 25 copies of a book. It's mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling that self-publishing is becoming cheaper than mass market publishing.
It is insane. I agree. I mean that, you know, I read all of the feature state. We did it for our podcast. Like we broke down every week, you know, like it was just something fun to do. but yeah, like the varying prices, it ranged from $3.99, and then the card stock for that's $4.99, and then you got the $4.99 comic with the $5.99 card stock, or you got the $5.99 issue with the $6.99 card stock, and it just like they literally had from $3.99 all the way to $8.99.
That's
Just like
that's insane. It doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't, and
Some kind of uniformity has to happen.
yeah, it's just, and a lot of people are kind of getting turned off by a little bit of the raising of prices of DC. Okay, yeah, you have a backup story, but like, well, I didn't ask for that backup story. I'd rather pay the $3.99 and just get
a backup story that used to be free. The cost, and I have this discussion a lot with Matt Sardo at Monkeys Fighting Robots, which I do Monkeys Fighting Robots comic books. So the Tales of Monkeys Fighting Robots, Tales of MFR comes out kind of weekly. We're wrapping that up at Strip 100. Mm-hmm. But we have this conversation constantly where the stuff that we used to like Manhunter, Walt Simonson's Manhunter stuff, mm-hmm. was just a backup story and was free, and that blew up his career. We have guys who are the backup stories now. It's reversed. It's flipped. It's not new guys coming in to do backup stories. It's like Gary Frank and mm-hmm. mega stars doing backup stories. So you're almost paying the $7 price tag for the backup story, as opposed to whoever's in the Batman book at that particular time. You're paying for the megastar. It seems backwards, right? Like
yeah, it's just very weird. Yeah, it's just a very weird thing. I mean, like, Rom V is doing Justice League Dark in the back of Justice League, and I keep wanting to take Justice League like off my pull, but I really want to read Justice League Dark.
Right.
It's so annoying that I'm like, I'm not enjoying this the meat of the book. I only want the back 8 pages of the fucking comic. So that in and of itself is kind of annoying also in that respect.
Right. So you are literally paying whatever the price tag of Justice League is for 8 pages.
Right. I'm paying $5 for 8 pages.
Yeah.
I'm not paying the price tag is $5. I obviously get a discount because I work at a shop. So
right.
But still, it's yeah, I don't know. The DC thing, like, I got excited because I'm like, oh, cool. We got some different creators, some new voices at DC. Like, maybe things are gonna, be better than what they were. Because I dropped every DC book for a while. I was not buying any. I've always been a DC guy. And there's some good stuff coming out. Rom V is like becoming one of my favorite writers. I think he's really awesome. What he's doing with Swamp Thing is cool. His Catwoman stuff. Joelle Jones, I love her. She's doing that Wonder Girl book, and that's phenomenal. You got Tom Taylor on Nightwing. But like, for the majority of the line, I'm just like, fuck, even with my discount, I don't want to buy this book because like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. There has to be a point where they just like, okay, we're not going to raise the books this frequently, because the economy's prices don't raise as comic books do. So if you want to tell me everything gets all the prices raised, yeah, but comic books seem to be more frequently than everything else.
This is my this will probably be my one critique about please, DC, continue to raise your prices, because it is helping the indie creators become like actually sustainable. We're in this really cool period of time where it feels like just past post Turtles, right? Like just like the late 80s, 90s period where where self-publishing is becoming viable again, right? 10 years ago, self-publishing was off the table. Now it kind of feels like, wait, and especially since this pandemic and when Diamond shut down, I know from my end, a lot of people ordered books because I was still shipping books, right? You could, and you were getting it directly from the creator. Jim Rugg's Kickstarter, the Octobriana stuff, he did gangbusters, right? Like that was insanely fruitful. But it also comes at a time where like people wanted books. People want content. People want to read something. And so now coming at it from my end, it's like, keep raising prices, because I would love to do more single issue type things. A couple years ago, that wasn't viable. Now I'm thinking, all right, I'm going to make a magazine. I'm going to do this. I've been playing with the idea just this past week about just putting out single issues of just, I'll do it on stream. I'll do it on Twitch, and just here's a full comic book that I'm doing, and then I'll color it, and then I'll print it real cheap, and then sell it. Like, it seems that's increasingly easier to do as the prices of the competitors goes up, and I'm able to kind of undercut costs.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
But when I started doing comics like 7 years ago, the $5 price tag of an indie book was still considered high. And now you kind of get to see that it's the shift has changed, and like, oh, it's like, oh wait, I can do this cheaply and I can undercut, and with people like printers like Comics Wellspring that have made it increasingly easier for self-publishing and digital printing. Their books print fantastic. The Jamboree, the Babs and PL Jamboree was printed through them, and I think they upgraded their printers. Like the pinks and the yellows in that book are so vibrant.
Oh yeah.
And I've printed through them several times, but this one was like, oh wow, this is really cool. This is a really good quality comic now. So just thinking, and they're super cheap, and they cut, if you're crowdfunding, they give you a discount. So like,
oh nice.
They're going all in on the crowdfunding Kickstarter world. And you see that with smaller printers supporting and helping the smaller creators. And it's great because now we're all able to compete with the big stuff. It's a really exciting time to be an indie creator.
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting to be a fan of the stuff, because there's so much cool stuff coming out, and I feel like there's more and more stuff now, and maybe I'm just looking for it now. I don't know, but
it's everywhere.
A lot more.
It's everywhere. I don't know. I feel like I'm so steeped in the world at this point, but it's like even guys just posting stuff on Instagram, right? Constantly, like guys just post, and then that book's going to be collected in a Kickstarter down the road. So it's like, oh man, I missed a couple strips. You just go back, you read it.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a 300-page comic.
Yeah.
in the near future. So like, it's cool. It's a really cool time. It's a really cool industry right now. And I think it's just going to get better. I think we're going to have a really great, smaller kind of niche industry in 5 years. That's my bet is 5 years from now, you'll walk into a comic shop or maybe not even a comic shop. You'll just be buying your comics directly from the people. I would love to start and certain guys, it's like the Strangers fanzine.
Yeah. It's so funny that you mentioned it, because I wanted to start a distribution thing when I thought about this when it was right around the time that we interviewed via email. And
okay.
I was talking to Eli. I'm like, dude, I want to figure out a way to have one spot where everybody can go to get all these dope creators that I'm talking to, or even the ones I'm not talking to yet and want to talk to in the future. And then, so if I do it now, like, it looks like I'm copying Strangers, which I really like. I was not trying to do that, but I really want to help. Like, I want one spot where people can go find your stuff.
Yeah.
You go find Eli's stuff. They can go find a lot of people in the group. Like, I really want to do that. I just don't know the logistics of how to do it. You know what I mean?
I'm not entirely sure. You could probably just email the guy who does Strangers, right? Like, do that. And what's great about the smaller industry and the indie industry is it's just free information. Information is cheap. It's like, all right, go and implement it. There is kind of this chip on your shoulder when you make a comic book. And I have found this to be true with other creators, like high level creators that I've spoken to, and guys who have done self-publishing. When you do it, before you get in, there's always kind of this mystique. It seems gatekeepy, right? There's certain people who are like, oh, it's very difficult to draw a comic book. The second you draw a comic book and you publish it, information floods out of people. I remember I went to talk to Chuck Forsman. I gave him a copy of the Baboon, and he looked at me and went, 70-pound uncoated paper in a hardcover book? Respect. And I was like, he was like, I know you had to fight your printer to get that book published, printed the exact way you wanted to. And I was like, I did have to have that conversation. He was like, oh yeah, this is how you deal with blah, blah, blah. And the information just comes out of people. The second you produce something, it's easy. And I think like just reaching out to the guy who does Strangers and be like, hey, how do you actually do this? He'll just give you the information. I adopted a new coloring system that kind of uses the composite old school coloring that Ed Pisker uses for Grand Design and Jim Rugg has done.
Mm-hmm.
I just emailed Jim Rugg, right? He just gave me the information. He's like, this is how you do it. It's time consuming. Good luck. I was like, oh, it really wasn't difficult. You just have to know who to ask and ask the right questions. And then you just make it. It's the indie community is very supportive of the indie community. And that's exciting. And I think it's only becoming more exciting because now it's very much a punk rock kind of mentality where it's us against them being Marvel and DC. And that's kind of how it feels. Like I have friends who work for Marvel and DC and I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad I don't work for you. Like, I'm glad I'm over here doing my own thing. Would I love to do an Adam Strange comic? Yes. Would I love to do Legion of Superheroes? DC. I have 3 years of Legion of Superheroes stories in me. I know I do. Like they're plotted in my mind. I've got it. We're good. Adam Strange is the same thing. Like there's certain characters that I would love to go and dip my toe in, but now I'm slowly adapting those stories into more Baboon comics, right? Like that's really what it's coming down to. Is just I'll take some ideas that I had when I was a fan and make them now my own and readjust.
That's awesome. And I'm gonna talk to a guy from Strangers because
you should. I wish I had his name. I've got all the Strangers.
I believe it's. I mean, I reached out to him to do an interview because I wanted to talk to him about the thing, and he said, "Yeah, I know he was moving and stuff. He sent me all 5 issues of Strangers." So,
have you? Strangers is such. I'm so glad that I got on kind of early with Strangers, and it's such a fun, good interviews, interesting articles. The Jeff Darrow interview is really great. Go and read that. I learned some things about Jeff Darrow that I had never known. It's really cool, and it's so cheaply printed. Like it's just 11 by 17 paper folded and stapled. It feels very indie, and they really lean into that aesthetic.
I mean, I haven't. I just got them in the mail. I think last week. I just haven't had time to kind of check.
Yeah.
But I also want to I kind of want to save it till right before I'm going to talk to. I kind of do that when I get stuff from creative to talk to. Sometimes I sit on it for like a month, 2 months before I'm able to talk to them because I always want it fresh in my mind. But yeah, I really want to do it. I feel like I want to own a shop one day. So I want to be able to have this kind of product in my shop. Like that's what I want to help promote. And but for now, I work at a shop and we have 3 locations. So I don't see why I already talked to him yesterday. My manager, I was like, I want to bring in more stuff from the guys that I'm friends with in the group. Can I set this section up here? And he's like, yeah, I don't care. And he's like,
that's awesome.
He's like, reach out to him. So I feel like, yeah, you heard it here first. I want to start Comic Lounge distribution for indie comics. You know, anybody that's listening and watching, hit me up. The email down below if you're interested, and I will make it happen. I want to get more eyes on everybody's work, dude. You know, it's not for me to make. I'm not sure. It's not because I want to make money off people's work. I believe in your guys' stuff, and that's why I do these interviews with you guys. Plus, I love talking to you guys. It's always a blast. Because it's we're just shooting the shit half the time, talking books, and I sprinkle in a little bit of like, oh, so what are you working on? In the middle of it all. So yeah, dude, I'm very excited for everything you got in the works. And I can't wait. I can't wait for the magazine. I'm very stoked that you're doing that. Can't wait for book 2.
It's going to be I think it's going to be a really cool, fun time. I'm excited. The first story is written, so it's moving past from that.
Awesome, dude. And before I let you go, because I gotta head to work soon. What can we expect next? And then where can we find you on all social media platforms to follow you? And I'm going to drop every single link down below.
Cool. You can find, what am I doing next? I am the Baboon, all in. The next thing to drop or Tales of MFR, whichever in the schedule actually ends up happening first, because I'm working on them simultaneously. I don't know which one's actually coming first or not. Okay. So the second Baboon book is on Patreon. It's coming out on Patreon right now. I'm about halfway done with that, and then the Baboon magazine, and then Tales of MFR. I feel like I have multiple things in the fire. I may just do a single issue just to hang out and see if that works. Test my theory that we've talked about. So keep an eye out. I'm Art of Jamie Jones on everything. That's Twitter, Instagram. Patreon is also Art of Jamie Jones. And I guess my big thing now is I stream on Twitch. I stream on Twitch 4 days a week on my schedule, and I'm just making comic books. I went and bought all the cameras to do all the things, and it's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun over there. The community on Twitch is really cool. So if you want to just hang out for a couple hours, I'm there and making comics kind of quickly. Like at a really like I did the other day, I penciled 3 pages and inked 2 in like a 2-hour stream or a 3-hour stream. So it was like really bookend, because normally I get up and walk around, but Twitch kind of keeps me in my seat. So
all right, cool, man. Well, like I said before, thank you again for doing this with me. It's always fun talking with you. And everybody that's listening, watching, make sure you hit those links down below. Give Jamie a follow him on Twitch, all that stuff. Go support him on Patreon. And, dude, I know we're going to be doing another one of these again soon, so I can't.
Yeah, man. Let's do it.